distinguished speaker, Mr. Subhas Mondal Garu, Head R&D 5G Products at HFCL. Subhas Garu works with academia, standards, development organizations, open source and technology partners. Prior to joining HFCL, Subhas served as the chief architect of Wipro's organization-wide 5G initiative from 2018 to 2021. He was recognized as a Wipro Fellow for his technical contributions. He has over 30 years of engineering experience in telecom research and development. He is a passionate technologist and has developed a variety of solutions and frameworks in emerging technology areas such as 5G, SDN, NFV, Li-Fi, cybersecurity, and AI for network automation. Subhas holds an engineering degree from IIT Kharagpur in electronics and electrical communication engineering. Sir is going to talk to us today on private 5G and intelligence at the edge. Welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction, and it is my privilege to be part of this program. I hope my audio line is clear.
Yes, sir, it's clear, sir.
All right. So can I share my screen?
Yes, sir, you can, sir.
Okay. Please let me know once it shows up. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to all of you. In today's session, I am going to talk two pertinent topics which we are seeing is gaining a lot of attention from the industry. So 5G has come out of the research bed. The equipments are available. Global deployments have taken up. Most of the deployments today are public network rolled out by telecom operators. But there is an palpable excitement about the private 5G with the promise that 5G brings on the table for industrial revolution. So that is where the private 5G is gaining a lot of attention. There are countries where experiments are going on the private 5G. So I thought I will talk about that. But private 5G also is coming up with the requirement to offer industrial automation and bring in efficiency both on the manufacturing floor and the entire business process that enterprises are doing today. So 5G essentially therefore becomes an enabler to bring in multiple technologies together, especially so in the private use case scenarios, whereby the enterprise would like to leverage these new capabilities of an open disaggregated network and realize new use cases. Now you have to really revolutionize the industrial automation. This cannot be away from artificial intelligence. And when you blend this 5G and artificial intelligence and apply at the edge, a lot of beautiful things can happen. So in this session, what we are going to talk about is why do we need private 5G? Why we need the intelligence at the edge? How the network has evolved from both on the private side and public side? And what are the potential deployment options that are available to realize both private network and public network? Do they need to be separate? Can they coexist? Can they converge? Can they collaborate? So we will deliberate a bit on that. And I believe that there has been some session already on the role of AI/ML in 5G and 6G. But what I will talk about is not so much of AI/ML in the construction of the network, but how the AI and ML could be combined with the AI network the 5G network capability bundled with the domain intelligence, where the cross coupling of the application layer behavior and the network layer behavior becomes important. So it will kind of deliberate on the cross-layer optimization potential that AI and ML bring in the context of a 5G network. We'll talk about one pertinent use case related to video, and then we'll get into question and answer. I intend to wrap up this session in about 1 hour, maximum up to 1 hour 15 minutes, and we can get into question answer. But I also would like the session to be very interactive. It is very boring to talk for one continuous hour. So if you have any question, I'm happy to take the question as the session goes on, or if you prefer to do it at the end, either option is okay with me. So let's look at why do we need private 5G. So as you all have seen over the last 2 days that the previous speakers have talked about what are the use cases with 5G. So one of the use case that 5G is promising is like 4G revolutionized the smartphone mobility of the applications, both for your lifestyle applications and the business applications moved into your smartphone. Now 5G is expected to move the network to the next level where rather than the smartphone being open with an app ecosystem that enabled this revolution at the lifestyle and the business application, 5G with its promise to open the network with a set of open APIs that allows the network capability to be consumed by enterprise application. The promise is that huge amount of industrial automation will happen. Now, if you look at the industrial automation, what does it entail? Think about a manufacturing floor. Think about the operation into a bank. Think about an enterprise having a seamless interdepartmental coordination both on the operational floor and the IT floor. So when those kind of situation comes in, increasingly we are finding that there are a lot of machines which are getting involved in automating, and these machines necessarily require connectivity. And the industrial use cases are getting more sophisticated where the cyber physical systems are collaborating with the humans and doing a complex task in a collaborative manner. So in this kind of collaborations, there is a need for very low latency and extremely reliable communication to make sure that the operational failure doesn't happen. Just to give you an example, today many of these robotic processes are manually controlled. So think about a scenario when you are repairing an electrical line. This is one of the use cases whereby you would like to let the robot climb a pole and then repair a faulty electric line. The reason for doing this is that if a human has to do this, it becomes risky. It can be life-threatening. Whereas if a machine is doing, that risk is minimized. Now, if you want to do this today, the main way of doing it, it is not fully automated. So what you do a remote control, and today all of these are kind of very localized local area connection through a Wi-Fi functionality with a Wi-Fi access point feature being into the robot and a remote connecting to your laptop or a mobile phone, and from there you are controlling the robot to perform the operation. Now this is moving into a full automation. Of course, this is where a lot of object identification and then object recognition based action are happening. So for example, if a camera feed is coming from the head of the robot and there is a robotic process which is doing a video analytics and then making a decision, it could essentially replace that human intervention, and then this robot itself could be remote controlled by a AI application. Now in these cases, one of the phenomenon is that where do you like the intelligence to reside? The intelligence, if you have to put all of that within the computer, within the robot, the amount of computational power required is significantly high, and also the power consumption will be practically impossible to maintain for a sustainable period of time. So what typically is done is that if we minimize this intelligence and have it is like a thin client model, a central intelligence engine could control all of that. So when you have to distribute the intelligence and the action over a network, you need to have this network to be very, very reliable. And this network should have a very, very predictable latency. And that is where the need for a guaranteed bitrate connectivity comes in. So the question arises, can this be done by the public network? Today, if you look into the 4G network, the traffic classes are very, very limited. So LTE is a packet only network. There is no circuit switch. So when the voice call is made and if native video calling is supported, these services get one QoS treatment. The entire network otherwise is there is a best effort network and it becomes a scheduling priority based quality of connection. So in the connections of this nature, which may not be classified as a voice or video, you essentially will end up with a best effort connection. And that is not good enough to realize this set of use cases. So therefore, we need a connection that offers this guarantee. And if the enterprises need to build this network, this will become a private network built and operated by the enterprise. If this is a private network, as a virtual private network offered by the communication service provider, then that would be a case of public network doubling up as a private network and giving the same characteristic that the enterprise is looking for a private network. So this is one of the big use cases that is driving the private network, and the intelligence is being required to make sure that the data do not have to travel too far. The second use case is, if you look today, the amount of video traffic that we share is phenomenally high. The question is, how do we really exchange the information locally? Just to give you an example, at home, when I have to share some video that I have received from either I have recorded or I have received from some source, I want to share with my wife and daughter and son. What I typically do, the easiest mode of exchanging the information has become WhatsApp. Technically speaking, if you transfer this data locally within your Wi-Fi access point, a lot of data consumption could be reduced. So what happens in this example? The video file, let's say it is 100 MB file of video. I am sharing it with one WhatsApp. So what is happening is this data from my home router is going to internet, going to the WhatsApp server, and then it is getting routed to the other endpoints. And therefore, there is an uplink data consumption of 100 MB. There is a downlink data consumption of 100 MB. And depending on that application characteristic, if it is creating a broadcast server location from where all the recipients are receiving it, still every retrieval is becoming 100 meg each. So if I have 3 recipients, effectively 400 meg of data is getting exchanged over the internet. And if it is a mobile internet, the cellular network is becoming a vehicle for providing the transport both in the uplink and downlink direction. The question is, rather than involving the entire network all the way to the server into the WhatsApp, is there a possibility of locally uploading the traffic and route the data bearers right from the access point? So if you have to do that, the option that exists today is that you need to have a local breakout option. So while the WhatsApp central control could still be in the cloud, because the control traffic has to tell who are the endpoints, what are their identities and addresses, and where to route it. Once that is done, and this private key for the endpoints are known, security keys, it can encrypt on an end-to-end basis, and still it can provide that connectivity, but local offloading will allow that rerouting to happen from the nearest routing point. Now, this is possible only if the WhatsApp is hosted, the Wi-Fi access point is controllable by a common controller under the control of a central control function. In this case, a service provider is the one who could make it happen. So if the service provider in this example is hosting a WhatsApp server in collaboration with the application provider, and it has a policy set saying that based on the endpoint addresses, I could really route it in the nearest possible routing point. A lot of these use cases will eliminate the amount of congestion that you see today. Look into the Amazon video as an example. If it is possible that frequently vast contents are cached closer base station rather than every time bringing it from a central server, it could offload a huge amount of backhaul connection between the base station to the core network. And that is where the edge computing node is coming up. And the intelligence is really distributed between the edge and the central controller in such a fashion under the guidance of the central coordinator. Edge decides what function to host, what to cache, what not to cache, how long to keep the cache, and when to remove the cache. So this becomes a real use case whereby a lot of benefit can be brought into everybody, to the end user. The user experience will improve because it doesn't have to go all the way to the cloud to get this data. The number two, it will be very beneficial to the service provider because the service provider is not getting the data for each session, rather the important session data is being captured locally into the cache, and when the service request comes, it is being delivered locally. And this is possible only if there is an intelligent coordination between the edge control node and the central control node. So this is one of the key use cases that essentially are driving the private 5G, local intelligence, and then data delivery to decongest the network. Why do you need intelligence at the edge? So if you really look at the two scenarios that we talked about, we need the processing of the data closer to the source. We need to have a mechanism whereby the network capabilities could be consumed by the application. And how that is possible? Because the network has been disaggregated and also network has been made open. All the network capability being accessible over the API. There is a common API framework that is allowing that. And as a result, you could essentially make use of the data transported by the network, make it available to the application layer, do the processing, understand the network telemetry, and decide whether that network condition is good enough for the application to perform optimally. If not, go and ask the network, hey, listen, I need little more bandwidth. Hey, listen, I need little low latency. Can you please provide that? So network becomes responsive to tell the application, yes, I have the capacity, or go back and say, listen, I'm sorry, but I am not able to provide this connectivity to you. So the application layer can decide what to do in the event the network is not able to fulfill the request that it has to fulfill the service obligation of the application. So this becomes really important. And one other important factor that has come is traditionally network has been a connectivity pipe. But the 5G network also is providing the computing fabric as an integral offering into the 5G network. Edge computing is a classic example of that. Similarly, the cloud network coming closer to the network edge, what it means is it is not necessary that this edge is sitting between the packet core network and the base station. But this edge computing can be hosted alongside the core as a telco cloud, and the business application workload could be hosted there as well. So essentially, the 5G network is bringing in the application hosting capability between the core network and the base station in the form of an edge computing node where the local breakout is possible, one scenario. Second scenario, it is allowing access to the computing capability right after the core network at the HCI interface, or in the new terminology of the 3GPP release 15 and 16 for 5G core, N6 interface. You are able to get the traffic and you can host your application right after the core network function. That is right after the UPF hosted at the core network. So this essentially gives very powerful distributed computing architecture where your central coordination could be into, for example, Amazon cloud, and that cloud instance distributes and decides where the next level of intelligence should be. Should it be in the telco cloud or should it be into the edge cloud? And accordingly, it adjusts and meets the end user requirement based on the latency target and user experience target. So this is essentially enabling faster reaction time to events. If you think about the use case I was talking about, let's say that I have to do a remote driving in this diagram. So what would happen is if I am far away from the car, my limitation would be really two things. The transport network providing me a connection to the base station where the car is located currently, and the base station providing the access connection to the car. The sum total of these two should be within the permissible limit. And later in the slides, you will see that remote control will require something around 5 millisecond end-to-end latency. And that's a very difficult target to meet. If you want to really handle that and make sure that this is available on a guaranteed basis, you essentially would have a limit as to how far away from the car you can be for your remote driving. So for example, if it is spanning across a distance greater than 25 kilometer, every 25 kilometer to transport the packet, I guess it will give rise to about 1 millisecond of latency. And if it is tolerable in meeting this, yeah, you still will be able to go further than 25 kilometer. But technically, it will become challenging as the distance increases because every 25 kilometer will give a transport latency of 1 millisecond. Right. So the next important point is cross-layer optimization. So think about a situation where a video analytics is deciding the earlier use case that I am having a pole climbing robot. I am trying to identify what is the quality of the line. Is the crack too big that I need to replace the wire? Now, if I have to do a good quality video analytics, I need a very high resolution picture. And if I am doing a real-time analytics on that, there will be a data rate that is required to transport that picture quality at the interval that the use case demands. And if the network connection is falling short of that kind of quality of service to ensure that the data transport can happen in the real time of that quality, then it can go back and then figure out how do I really analyze this. So you get into two options. One option is that you adjust your algorithm so that it tries to work with this reduced resolution. But you may encounter a situation your probability of error in correctly identifying the object will reduce. So rather the probability of error will increase. So what you would want is you want the network to readjust the QoS parameter and ensure that it can meet this application target. So this becomes a case based on the application performance. You decide whether you need network assistance in getting a better quality. The other important thing that is coming into the intelligence as the edge is the advancements in the hardware technology that is allowing AI engines a reality. So if you think about a cloud gaming, so what happens in cloud gaming is rather than the game being resident into a gaming console, which was very popular at some point in time. You actually do all this processing into a central cloud server and you stream the game rather than end computing doing all this computation. Now this requires a huge amount of graphics processing, and that GPU, if hosted at the edge computing node, you can very comfortably provide this cloud gaming. And then today, if you look at most of the network gaming has moved into this cloud gaming architecture, because maintaining the game at a central server becomes a lot easier and it becomes a pay per use. So it is becoming very popular from that perspective. And this would not have been possible unless the hardware had really progressed at the rate that it has today. So any questions so far? Okay. So if not, I will quickly talk about the evolution of private and public network. So if you really look at how the private network and public network has evolved, if I go back 30 years, it was all telephony services over a PSTN network. And then what happened is the PBX was a means for providing the connectivity within the enterprise setup, and the local area network was involved in providing the connectivity for the computers. So as things progressed over time, the enterprises realized that maintaining the PBXs is not always very easy. So what happened is the concept came up saying that I will just I will use the pen. In the presentation mode, it doesn't seem to work. So I will get into. So if you really look at it, this Centrex feature came in, whereby what you could do, you can still have the PBX extension concept here, and you could dial them, and then it is kind of an edge computing, you can say, a line card that is hosted in the enterprise location. The PSTN central signaling system could coordinate with this local line card and then do the local breakout, meaning that the circuit connection being done from here. Now, the same concept evolved into the data network. So what happens is, if there is a computer here connecting to another computer, so let's say that one is connected through Wi-Fi, another is connected through RJ45. There will be a second level switch function which will do the automatically spanning tree protocol can discover their location, and then an edge router sitting here that could be probably bridging two different LAN segments if they happen to be in that fashion, and they will establish the connection. So you can say, for all practical purposes, all local endpoints connected into the LAN, they were getting routed through the nearest local hub. If it had to access the internet, it had to go over this wide area network that is provided by an internet service provider. So what happened, as independent evolution happened for the voice infrastructure as well as the data communication infrastructure, it turned out that Centrex eventually became what is called a unified communication. Then that was possible because of this voice over IP enabled by IMS. So now, if you move forward, this phenomenon continued independent of the mobile network. But when the mobile network evolved from the 2G to 3G, the concept of the data network became very important. So like the wireline data and voice network being separate, the 2G network started primarily voice network and incidentally data network. 3G became both voice and data. So in this case, you had two separate core network functions. So one was called the circuit switch core, another was the packet switch core. When 4G came in, there was no concept of circuit switch core anymore. So it became only 4G core. And this 4G core essentially had no capability to natively create the voice call. So this is where the IMS came in. So if you really look at it, this really revolutionized the way any use case or application is realized. So voice became yet another application on top of the packet switched network. Now that brought in a lot of challenges in terms of how do I ensure that the circuit switch capabilities are emulated on a packet switch network. The reason being that voice requires a deterministic delivery of the packet so that every 125 microsecond one sample can be played back, because the voice is sampled at 8 kilohertz and each sample is at 8 bits. So essentially 64 kbps net throughput is required. Of course, there is compression with the codecs G.723, 729. They do a significant compression, but the decompressed information should be delivered at 64 kilobit per second so that the playback is smooth and there is no discontinuity of voice. And same thing applies for the video. Now, as the technology matured, the core network was able to provide the quality of service required for conversational services, and there are a lot of standard 3GPP specifications that enable that happening. So parallelly, what happened? This PBX phenomenon completely disappeared. And there came a concept called the unified communication, where your email, internet browsing, your voice call, video call, conferencing, everything came under one umbrella. And if you really needed to still continue connecting with a PSTN network, whether it is a mobile or a class 5 wireline switch, there was a concept called the session border controller. It could really provide an edge connectivity to make sure the voice traffic can go through this connectivity and then terminate the call to a traditional PSTN user, for example. Right? So in summary, if you look into this evolution, private network, both for the voice and data. Sorry, it looks like my connection dropped. Am I still audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
My sharing somehow stopped. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so sorry about this. I don't know what happened. All right, so continuing, what really happened subsequently is that we find that the private PBXs cease to exist. The local area network still exists. It traditionally used to be the wireline connection, which has become primarily Wi-Fi today. Most of the offices today, you will not find too many Ethernet cables hanging around. It will be using Wi-Fi. Now the question is, how did really Wi-Fi network evolve to make sure that the quality of services for voice and video can be met? So if you go back some time back, at least I remember, if I was consuming a video streaming service for very senior professionals like the CEO addressing the organization, I needed to connect my computer to an wired Ethernet connection. The reason being is the Wi-Fi 802.11bg, there was no quality of service that ensured that the streaming service is treated at a priority that will guarantee the seamless streaming experience. So I had to necessarily connect to an RJ45 interface, without which the server used to decline to say that you are not on a trustworthy connection, therefore I cannot offer you the streaming services. So this was a policy controlled mechanism, and if you had to really handle that, what happened is you really needed to bring in the quality of service in subsequent releases. So if you look into 802.11 AC, which is called the Wi-Fi 5 and then Wi-Fi 6, 11AX, those conversational streaming services, video conferencing, all of those sessions, there is a quality treatment that allows you to have a reasonably good connectivity to make sure that you can converse. Now, parallelly, if you really look at the reason I'm giving you this history is that this is a very interesting evolution that now the 5G core network is catering to a much more complex use case scenario. Earlier, it was data as a one data type and the voice or multimedia services another data type. Now, in the context of industrial automation, the traffic mix has become extremely complex. The quality of service requirement has become extremely complex. So just to give you an example, traditionally, IoT has been treated to be very low data rate, traffic, and very infrequent. The rest of the traffic, for example, the streaming services, entertainment, they have been treated as high bandwidth consuming applications. But this latency, all those things are kind of tolerable. It is not very stringent. There is third category of connection that requires to be very, very reliable. So for example, public safety operation. It may be exchanging not too much of the data, but it essentially will ensure the public safety network need to make sure that no data is lost. If somebody is trying to make a cellular push to talk, it is expected that that connectivity will be delivered 100% of the time. And it's a do or die situation. Somebody is drowning and the rescue operators would need to get an information from a remote handler to say what is the state, and they should be able to give an instruction of what needs to be done. And any loss of information could cause a loss of a life. So those kind of scenarios, those requirements are little different. Now, there are use cases that is having a combinational capability. So look into the remote driving that we are talking about. So what it required is the camera feed is a use case of eMBB, where a lot of data is required to be transported in the uplink direction. The remote driving command, which is taken based on the video feed analysis, let's say manually for the time being, and the manual driver, the remote driver is deciding to turn the wheel. Now this is going into the downlink. This downlink you are expecting to be extremely fast, meeting that 5 millisecond end-to-end target to make sure that actual actuation of the wheel rotation takes place and causing the intended action. So then the question comes, how do you really collaborate that across the network? Is this public network deployment still going to be adequate for us to meet this requirement or not? If not, do I really need to get into the private deployment? That is the centrality of the problem, why I actually got into the history. So now if I move on further, now I also wanted to talk a little bit about the spectrum perspective. How do you really build the private network? So if you really look at the traditional private network, the PSTN, PBXS, or the local area network, there is no need for the spectrum. When you build a private data network, you have what is called the experimental IP addresses, which is private identity. It doesn't have any public identity. Therefore, when you build an isolated network, it does not collide with any other IP addresses outside the enterprises. When you have a edge router and you are having a unique external IP address, you can use that as a proxy for communication with the rest of the world. So therefore, there is no collision. In case of cellular wireless network, which needs to have a public identity, the moment you make these endpoints to have a public identity, it necessarily need to have a mechanism whereby it does not collide with anybody else's network. So the question is, if I have to build a private network wirelessly, and I have to avoid collision. What option exists? So in this space, Wi-Fi technology has been an unlicensed technology. It has been collaborative in the sense that it does the collision sensing, it does the collision avoidance, but it comes with its inherent challenges. As the number of endpoint increases, number of access point increases, the throughput starts reducing. So therefore, if I have to have a ultra reliable low latency or guaranteed the quality that 5G is promising to be met, I need to have a dedicated spectrum for building my private network. Now the question is, if you give away this spectrum to the enterprises, how do you really make sure that the separate spectrum is available for the public network? So since the spectrum is a very, very expensive resource and scarce resource, the entire world is looking at how do we really harmonize it to make sure that this fragmentation of the spectrum between public and private network does not jeopardize the way public networks are built today. So this is where the GSMA, the Global Service Providers Association, who is essentially enabling the global uptake of the cellular network, is of the opinion that this fragmentation should not happen. On the other hand, the enterprises feel that unless the spectrum is given to them, they are at the mercy of the telcos, and therefore they cannot build the network that they need, and they are actually being at the mercy of the telcos. If they are building at the same time not making the spectrum available, they are stranded, they are not able to realize their use case. So how do you break this jinx is the question. So this is where some countries like Germany and Japan, they have taken a move of giving free spectrum. At the moment it is still in the initial stage that enterprises are allowed to build their network using them. Now then the question comes, if there are two enterprises adjacent to each other, how do you really make sure this private spectrum does not become a bone of contention between two of them? So there are a lot of regulatory and policy issues, but we will take an examination of technical features from the deployment perspective, what you could do to make best use of this situation, even if when the spectrum may not be available. So there are a couple of things that has happened in 5G. So there is a new feature called 5G Lab. So in this depiction, I am essentially showing an interesting hybrid use case. Here, if you look into, this is an enterprise. This segment that I am showing, it's an enterprise. Enterprise has two parts. One is the knowledge workers, which is catered to by the IT. They are the administrative office. And then this is an industrial manufacturing floor on the left, where you can see a lot of robots and video feeds are coming in, which needs to be operated upon for producing the goods. Now, in this case, it is not necessary the enterprise workers need a 5G connection per se. What they can do, they can still have a Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6 and meet all their daily need. So this is called your IT network. And on this shop floor, there are low latency applications that are necessary for the factory to work properly. This is called the operational floor. And the technology involved is operational technology. So to cater to this operational technology, they need a guaranteed quality of service. And let us say that we build a 5G base station to cater to those use cases. The question comes, would the enterprise need to build it all by themselves, or could they collaborate with a telco and then make sure that their use cases are met? So let us take for argument's sake that the telco says that there is no return on investment. I am not willing to give you a network slice that will meet your requirement. So network slice characteristic could be, I need to have 10 to the power 5 connections per square kilometers. Well, technically it is feasible as per the 5G standard, but the amount of investment required to build they find that I am not going to get the revenue. Had it been the public offering that I was offering to the rest of the crowd. So what happens then is this enterprise can go and say that, listen, I am okay to pay for a dedicated base station, but that's all I'm going to put. Rest of the ecosystem on the core network and all you build. So what happens in this case, the telco spectrum can be used because the telco is building and operating, but it is like you can say that in the cloud model, you have what is called a platform as a service, or you have infrastructure as a service, or you have a software as a service. So what happens if you get into the infrastructure as a service, it is as if this base station is dedicated to you. If you get into that model and then you say, I also would like to have an MEC node so that the all local data remains local to me. So what the telco do, it puts an user plane function and it does the local breakout based on a policy that says any data coming from this particular G node B cannot go out of this endpoint. So what happens in this case, you basically are able to provide all the user requirement as far as this enterprise as an user is concerned, and you actually are able to provide all the slice requirement in terms of the low latency, in terms of the data price, basic data security, all of it. Now let us say that an IT worker, in this case an administrative person, moves from this enterprise network to this operational floor. How do you handle the connectivity? The wireless LAN, let us say, is not adequately available there. So two scenarios can arise. This user holding a Wi-Fi connection on its mobile device, it needs to be authenticated and recognized as one of the enterprise users, and then make sure that the connectivity seamlessly hands over to 5G. Similarly, when the manager comes back from the operational floor back into the enterprise building, the 5G radio network should be able to hand over the connection to the Wi-Fi network. So if you have to do, you need to have a seamless authentication scheme that recognizes this LAN segment as a trusted LAN, as an extension of the public network, and then it allows the seamless handover between the Wi-Fi network and 5G. So many of you would have noticed already, folks like Airtel and Reliance Jio, they are offering a feature called voice over Wi-Fi. So how this is possible is that if your connectivity switches for a particular session to a Wi-Fi network and the IP reachability is reestablished using the SIP client that is persistent into your mobile phone, it can hand over the connection to the Wi-Fi. So this is one of the techniques that is being used, and then it asks for a permission. Would you like to use the voice over Wi-Fi? Now the problem with this technique that exists today is that you may not be able to apply the quality of service based on the access point that you have at home. So I have at home, let's say 802.11n. So what happens is if my network is under heavy use, sometimes the voice quality degrades really badly. So I actually disable this voice over Wi-Fi option so that it continues. So the good part here is if you are on a Wi-Fi 6 on the enterprise side, there you can apply the quality of service and then you still will not have any issue. So in summary, what is happening is the private network realization, you actually can work in tandem with a telco, and then it is like an interworking function. It is like a VPN connectivity that you used to get that you are today natively able to get using what is called a 5G LAN. So if you look into the 5G LAN, an enterprise user moving from one base station to another base station 100 kilometers away, but within the same telco service area, it still will have all set of functionality that you are supposed to get inside the building had it been done based on the enterprise Wi-Fi network. So this is really revolutionizing the way the workplace mobility is enabled. So 5G LAN will be a huge enabler as far as the enterprise mobility is concerned. Right. So I thought I'll quickly mention that. Now, coming back, one other point I wanted to mention is that some of the use cases earlier I talked about, if you would like to host any of this local application that is controlling this operational floor, all this could be done into this application server here. So if you look into the 5G core network, it has got disaggregated this wireless integration that I was talking about. This integration will happen through what is called the non-3GPP interworking function. And the other thing that I was talking about, if I have created an AI application here on an application server hosted here, it actually could interact with the 5G network using the network exposure function and then change the network characteristic to make sure that the use case requirements are met. Right. So I'm not getting into the details. I'm assuming that you have seen the 5G network architecture, how the telco 5G core network architecture has evolved. So in this example, you are seeing the user plane function is hosted into the enterprise. Of course, there is an user plane function into the telco cloud itself. And depending on the use case, the data coming from this base station, it will flow either like this and break out here, or it will go like this as a transit point, or directly to this, and then it will go to the internet. In this case, it will go to the internet here, right? So this data flow will be determined by the policy and the kind of traffic that is coming. So one interesting point I wanted to say, it also is not necessary this base station is dedicated for this this particular customer. You also can administer the other users, public users, but they would be on a different slice. So their QoS parameters are going to be very different, and this enterprise will get priority. So based on that, the telco also can decide how much to charge. It is like a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service model, you can say. In infrastructure as a service model, the entire base station is dedicated to the enterprise, provided they are willing to pay for it, or it can get into a platform as a service, in this case, connectivity platform, along with an edge computing load coming alongside and being dedicated, and that will be costing lesser to them. So these are the options that come up, and then the beauty of this model could be that the enterprises need not have the headache of building and operating this 5G network. So some of the challenges you already talked about. How do you get spectrum for building private network? Do you build or do you create a virtual private network in tandem with a telco? How do you manage the private network? So this becomes a big scenario, and subsequently we will see that one of the use cases of AI is becoming a self-governing or self-managing network through the SON functionality, self-organizing, self-optimizing network. Now, the other interesting question comes is, can you build private 5G in unlicensed band? So there I wanted to highlight there is a standard called NR unlicensed, that actually allows you to do the unlicensed band radio, but there would be challenges like any other unlicensed one, while there is a scheduling mechanism here. But if you look into Wi-Fi 6, this also can have scheduled mode and unscheduled mode. So the question is, do you go for this or do you go for this? Right. So technically, if you really look at, there is very little difference between Wi-Fi 6 and NRU, except for the fact NRU inherently is scheduled based. Both of them are using OFDMA. So Wi-Fi 5 was only OFDM. So there was a challenge, exponential backup problem was there. With OFDMA, that problem has disappeared. So technically, Wi-Fi 6 can perform at the same level, but if you schedule it, you can have the strict quality of service also met through this. So the question comes, if you want to build a private 5G network, will you do it using NRU and the rest of the 5G ecosystem, or will you do using Wi-Fi 6? and realize your use case, right? Or the other question is, how can you guarantee quality of service in unlicensed deployment, right? So just to give an anecdote, though Wi-Fi is an unlicensed technology, there is a huge amount of spectrum available at 5 gigahertz band. So what you could do, if you are building a factory where you do not expect a third party to have access into your infrastructure, technically you could still create a cellular structure and deploy the network inside and do the frequency planning, because there is a large number of unlicensed channels that are available. So if you are able to do that kind of control, you can have a very high quality and you can guarantee quality of service even using the unlicensed network. So you get into a cell structure of this nature and then you plan that no adjacent channels are reusing the same channel. Rather, no adjacent access points are reusing the same channel, right? So if you look at it, I briefly wanted to give a summary of some of the activities that has happened. ITU has been looking into application of AI ML in 5G and beyond network. And there was a set of problem that was a combination of solving the 5G networks construction in the form of RAN and core network. How do you really operate them better than the traditional way? So if, just to give the example, today the any network, cellular network, is a strict state machine. So the state machines are controlled using a very structured hierarchical control system, and that is managed using a set of protocols. So there is a normative specification that defines what are those protocols. So if you look into a cellular wireless, there is a RF layer, physical layer, then you have a MAC layer at L2, and then you have the RRC at L3, and then on top of that you have the standard TCP/IP stack for the application layer. So what happens is, if you would like to operate the network, let's say today, there has been an upgrade to define how the link control should be done between MAC layer to RLC layer, as an example. There is a clearly defined set of protocols. The question is, can you really get rid of this structured hierarchical protocol, and can you really use the machine learning techniques and then figure out whether a auto discovery can happen, which is most optimal for you to operate this. So this is where this the globally multiple academic institute formulated different problems. I have the links here, so if you can go to this, it is little bit about a year back when these challenges were given, and most of them are related to how the network is built and operated, right? How the network is constructed. But there also are the cross-layer optimization problem. So for example, things like topology optimization being used for rendering a particular service, or the orchestration function. This will cut across multiple layers, both on the transport and access side. So those are the cases where this has been looked at from the autonomy of the network person. So I am actually fast forwarding this. So one of the key enabling technology, it will take a lot of time if I get into the details. I'm jumping very quickly. So what has happened is the network programmability has been driven by standard, and that has been one of the key enabler for AI and the network automation that is possible today. So if you fast forward, this is essentially a foundation of SDN and NFV. And if you look at the way the network equipment was constructed, it used to be a dedicated appliance with a control plane, data plane, and the management plane all integrated into one box. Now, because of this disaggregation, a lot of possibilities opened up. So I will specifically call out the 3GPP CUPS architecture that came in release 14. The CUPS stand for control user plane separation. This specifically is for the 4G core network. And as you have seen in the earlier diagrams, the user plane function is essentially doing the user plane functionality. Essentially, all high-speed packet forwarding happens there. And control plane is mobility management function that is happening at the core network with the AMF and SMF, right? I have not gone into detail because I presumed you have already gone through it. So what is happening in this is that you are able to have a distributed control architecture and you can independently scale. So as a result, if you have to use an AI use case, whereby you need to take a decision, the local traffic has to be offloaded, you are able to do that. If you go back into 3G network, there was no way that you could realize that. So even if you want to have a AI algorithm run into the edge, the network didn't permit you to do that unless you move the core network locally there. And that was not practically possible. So this is one of the key foundation. And then there was a protocol called packet forwarding control protocol. Now what AI is trying to look at is, say, listen, can I get rid of PFCP, packet forwarding control protocol, and let AI figure out how to communicate between the control elements and the actuation function, right? So this is becoming very interesting way to look at it. So BIM management, one of the use cases I was talking about. If you want to do a BIM management, the same thing is happening. The BIM management is a combination of the physical layer process in terms of the pre-coding and the beam forming matrix, the beam ID associated weight that you want to manipulate. But that is based on a channel feedback. The CSI matrix that is reported by you, it goes all the way to the mobility management entity at the core, and then core tells the RRC layer what to do next. And basis that, the command comes out, the pre-coding in the forward path in the physical layer baseband signal processing does that stuff and then tells the radio, sends the analog signal after digital to analog conversion to the antenna port to say that create this beamforming to make sure that these use cases are required. So if you really look at this beamforming and the user mobility, you can find a pattern and then you can simplify a lot of this baseband signal processing. It could reduce a lot of power consumption and a lot of algorithmic complexities. So that is where quite a bit of research is happening on that point. But the key point I wanted to make is it is the disaggregation and decoupling of the network that really is allowing the AI to come into the force to realize all these beautiful use case scenarios, right? And then some of these advanced features that you have seen into the 5G specification, RAN slicing, transport slicing, core slicing, all this have been possible because of this disaggregation. Otherwise, it was just far dream. Time sensitive network again is bringing in a lot of challenges in terms of collaborating between the network and application to make sure the ultra reliable low latency connection flow on an end-to-end basis can be ensured. So this is becoming very critical, and some of this slicing, if you really look into the release 16 and 17 specification that is evolving for URLLC cases, you will find that the amount of processing that is required at the sub-slot level. So I'm not getting into that. I'm sure on the some of the session on RAN, you would have seen that in for URLLC in release 16, there is a concept of mini slot. And if you look into mini slot, it has come down to 2 OFDM symbol level. So if you really want to get into a mini slot based beamforming and scheduling, it gets very, very complicated. The question is, can a machine learning based beamforming algorithm simplify the stuff, right? So those are some of the cases that is being examined now. And some of the enhancement specification, the people are already started looking at potential of utilizing the AI algorithms to simplify some of them. Okay, so with that, I also wanted to highlight that there are a lot of specifications that has come up. There are a lot of open source that has come up that is bringing in this self-organizing, self-optimizing network concept. So Cognate as a 5G PPP EU-funded project. ONAP, you are aware, it's an open source project doing the open source management and orchestration function. ORAN Software Community is another Open RAN initiative that is doing the RAN disaggregation. Acray Noise and edge computing. Openness is again an edge computing platform. Open source Mano again is an orchestration. So the point I am making is these all projects, all of them are looking into leveraging AI algorithms for the network automation. These are the set. I am not getting into too much of it. So there are a lot of use cases for the network automation where the AI can come in. Automatic network planning, network coverage optimization, cutover, root cause analysis, fault recovery, network resource management, network slice management, end-to-end service quality management, all of that requires. So if you really look at the network autonomy, the both HC, ITU are looking into the SIE model where the autonomy of the autonomous vehicle and the autonomy of the network are being compared. So these all are part of the study for evolution of the 5G network towards 6G. So if you look into the ITU little bit search, you will find out that these efforts are going on currently. So another point I very quickly will touch upon, this is a loaded slide that how the microservices architecture is enabling the way we can embed the AI mechanism here. So if you look at the 5G core network is completely microservices. With the ORAN, even the radio access network distributed over CU-DU, and then the concept of radio intelligent controller with a real-time and near real-time closed loop, where the AI is coming in big time. And this is being possible only because the architecture inherently has become what is called the microservices architecture. So in a microservices architecture, you break down one particular service into multiple small entities, and they can publish their capabilities, and the another function can subscribe to their capabilities and then get notification when certain event happen on them. And then they can decide what to do next based on the notifications they receive. So many of these micro engine coming together, the lot of this AI algorithm can be infused in some of these micro engines to make sure that intelligence is suitably augmented rather than a deterministic function that otherwise used to be a very, very long heuristic. So this is essentially enabling a huge uptake and the potential for AI to flourish as an integrated fabric within the 5G network. And again, it is taken from ITSI and the initial technical report in 3GPP that has factored it from the ITSI's initial thing. So essentially, if you can see that how this framework will evolve, this also is getting into ITU essentially. If you look into the data coming from the O&M layer, this is network data analytics function. This is part of the 5G core network. And then the data could be coming in. The analytic function could be created. So for example, this general framework for 5G network automation, it could be used for replacing the existing element management system based on the pure and analytical function and creating a set of counter as a base for creating the network KPIs. So a lot of interesting activities happening in the history. So I will not probably get too much into it, QoS versus QAE. So QoS is the degree of delight or annoyance that one gets, and QoS of course is a description of the measurement of overall performance of a service, such as a telephony, computer network. So all these things can be characterized in the form of a latency and jitter and the bit rate it delivers. So that has been a basis for defining the QoS parameters. And this is a quick summary of the application category that 3GPP standard has looked into. You will fundamentally find three categories of services. One is called the guaranteed bit rate. Second is delay critical guaranteed bit rate and non-guaranteed bit rate. This is the most complex area that one would be reading. And the most difficult one here you see is that 5 millisecond end-to-end latency. Packet error rate should be either 10 to the power -5 and -4, depending on either it is remote driving and remote collision avoidance scenario. So if you look at that, it is extremely difficult to meet this end-to-end characteristic requirement. So quality of experience in this example, let's say I'm doing a remote driving. In a year, how many times I was in a nervous situation that I may cause an accident? That would be a measure of my annoyance and delight with respect to remote driving. So if it turns out that in a year I had 0 such encounter and tense moment, I will say, wow, my remote driving experience has been phenomenal. If this changes to 10 times, I will say, no, it was not that great. Not that I caused an accident, but I escaped a near accident situation. So then its rating, perhaps if it was in a scale of 1 to 10, first was 10, second probably will become 6 or 7. And if it becomes 20, this number may dramatically change from 6 to 1. They say that I have been very, very frustrated because 20 encounter in a year, it's a lot of life-threatening conditions, right? So the quality of experience is very difficult to model. It is subjective and all. So then the question is, think of a plethora of use cases that we are talking about earlier, whereby see, the video traffic characterization has taken more than 20 years to come up with an analytical model. So I will not get into that. I don't have time to cover that. So there is a concept of mean opinion score. I'll quickly jump some of those slides. Is that take this use case of guaranteed buffer-free viewing experience for a streaming session. So this standard in ITU has evolved for very, very long time. There are normative standard like PDOP TONTEM, that is called the Subjective Video Quality Assessment Method for multimedia application, J.247 for Objective Perceptual Multimedia Video Quality. So what happens in this case, when it is objective, using the network KPIs, you are able to create a model where you compute the mean opinion score, which used to be traditionally be done by the P.920, the subjective video quality. So essentially, in this case, a set of experts who are very good at analyzing the video quality, they used to have a reference video, playback that under network condition, and then compare them and then say what is their score. So if there is a set of expert giving the score in a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, the average of that will give you the mean opinion score. So there has been a lot of work for many, many years to arrive at this specification that gives you a tool to come back and say, how do I use the network KPIs in 3 key parameters? What is the throughput? What is your latency? And what is your jitter? So these 3 parameters essentially can determine what is the quality of experience measured in the form of a MOS. But if you extend this beyond video, it gets really complicated. Now these parameters are not really the video quality. It could be the, let's say that a robotic arm is inspecting the manufactured goods and detecting whether it is faulty or not. So there are too many control elements in this. One is that camera who is sending the feed. Second is the speed of the belt that is determining how soon this manufactured goods is moving away. And so the thing is that camera should be able to transmit the signal reliably. The video analytics application should be able to detect whether it is faulty or not based on the model. Its accuracy should be good. Once this analytic function determines that it is faulty, the decision should be communicated back to another moving robotic arm, which can go pick up the faulty component, maybe at a distance far from where the inspection camera was put. And then it should make sure that the transport time, because of the conveyor belt speed, it still is able to compute and then make a decision and determine the object location, pick it up, and then throw it out. So there are multiple error propensity. One is that if the arm he is not able to pick up correctly. That could be attributed to the latency of the command coming to the robotic arm to pick and throw it into the bin. Second option could be the belt speed that has changed. So if belt speed has changed, can the cognitive process be applied to determine that how quickly I should mobilize the arm from the point? And if I do not have the enough reaction time, I am missing it. How do I communicate? And in a closed loop fashion, I can do that. So how do you really model the quality of experience in a complex situation like that? So these are the open research problems that we can look at. I'm skipping some of the slides because I wanted to take the question, but I wanted to summarize to say that the application of the AI, it requires a huge amount of domain knowledge. And this is where the real problem comes. So for example, AI has been a known science for a very, very long time. Application in the medical domain and making best use of it has taken many years. The reason being is it probably takes learning, machine learning, data science, being able to use the existing algorithm and create a prototype very rapidly. Today, the engineering students coming out from the college, in no time, they're able to create an AI model. But is that good enough? The answer is no. So what you really need is the domain knowledge. So for example, producing a doctor requires you minimum 5 years. And then to get reasonable proficiency after your master's, maybe another 2 years, and then another 5 years of practice. So 10 years after that, you can say I have learned reasonably well. The question is, how do you really train this AI model using the domain knowledge so that this analytical function also starts operating at the same level of proficiency? So this becomes the crux of the matter. Is there a way that the domain knowledge could be transferred into a knowledge graph automatically and then make sure that that
अभी
is
एक किलोमीटर क्या जाएंगे नीचे?
Yeah. Sorry, I think there was some noise. So that is one of the key areas. So this is where generic the intelligence is required really. Can you give a textbook to a robot to read the book and learn from it? That essentially becomes the question. So I think this is where both computer science and communication engineering are coming together to make sure that this objective can be met. So with that, I will conclude my session. Sorry, I have run little longer than I anticipated, but we have another maybe 12-13 minutes for question. Thank you. I can take questions now. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Is there any question?
Yes, sir. 1 second, sir. Sir, one of the participant, Archana ma'am, she is working in this particular problem, and she is asking, she is using regression method to predict mass in Wi-Fi network.
Okay. Yeah, so ma'am, is there any specific question that you have in this junction? So I'll just quickly, good to note that you are working on the modeling the mass. So one of the key thing happens is that I actually had applied this for a 4G base station where the layer 2 MAC layer messages that we were taking the MAC layer KPI. So if you really look at it, there are three fundamental attributes that I was mentioning. One is that what is the required throughput for that particular video session versus what you are getting. So it is the gap into the throughput. The second parameter is latency. What is the expected and the actual latency? The third parameter is the jitter. What is the delay variance that will cause an anxiety or irritation to the recipient, because there would be flicker perhaps, right? If it is a video session. Now, there is an E model that I was talking about. This is again an ITU model. So the first question is parametrically, how do you relate the R score? This is called the transmission rating score with the so what you can do is that if you are doing a regression, you can have two kind of thing. One is that you build your regression model basis the parameter hierarchy that determines each of these KPIs, and then do the computation of the score. So what you have to do, you need to have a label data set. So if you want to create a label data set, you also would need to have a rating engine. So how do you rate the quality of a particular video? And then for a data sample, so the sample generation becomes your first problem, right? So what are the RAN KPIs that you can control or capture related to the R score and map it into a MOS score in return, directly or indirectly? So if you are able to create that correlated data set which is labeled, then that you can feed into your machine learning algorithm. So I don't know if that answers your question, ma'am, but I am happy to discuss.
Sir, madam is asking about what are the parameters you are using.
Yeah, so one of the thing, see in Wi-Fi, the issue is that you may not have too much of control on this. So for example, I will talk with respect to LT, you can draw a parallel. One is that the MAC scheduler. The MAC scheduler will be scheduling at what interval you are scheduling how many radio resource bearers, right? So the radio bearers will determine what is the throughput you will get. And if you sample it and then you find that the scheduling frequency is inadequate, then you can really go back and determine that scheduling is causing the problem, right? Or if you find that at any point in time there are too many sessions, as a result scheduling is getting impacted, you could look at it. But when you come to Wi-Fi, unless it is Wi-Fi 6 and you have a scheduled mode enabled, you may not be able to go there. So the point I'm making is that your only parameter in the Wi-Fi context could be you create a probe function that will determine what is the downlink throughput, what is the uplink throughput, what are the presence of number of access points that is adjacent to it, how many users are latched onto this particular user at a point, and therefore what is the latency, and at that instance what is the jitter, and what is the scheduled throughput that you are getting for your application. So if you create that as a logical data set and say that the video streaming experience at that time, you find that video quality is good, let us say you give a score of 5, means extremely good. You say it is good, but it could have been better. You give, let's say, 4.5. So it is becoming subjective to your assessment. But if you are evaluating and labeling that data set, this your regression algorithm will enable you to come back and predict under a given condition. So in this case, what will happen is, given the this set of user parameters, how many access points are visible at that point in time. This is the telemetry that your access point controller should be able to give you using TR069 interface. I'm presuming that would be supported into the version that you are using. Or if you are using your own open source software like OpenSCS, right? I think that is one of the software that you can use for your access point management. What capabilities it will give you, that will determine what you can or cannot do. But if you are writing the entire software, you will have all the control to determine what you would like to do.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any IEEE standard defined for edge computing in 5G? One of the participants has asked us.
See the edge computing, there are a lot of literature available. So if you are looking from the standard perspective, you can look into the IEEE standard 3GPP. The starting point will be 23.501. that will give reference to a lot of edge computing related document. Look into release 16 or 17 document. 23.501 is a good starting point, which will give you the pointers. Subsequently, you can navigate or Google search the 5G edge computing or the ITSI edge computing. So there is a set of APIs that are defined how the MEC platform should be managed, how the application lifecycle management should be done, how location should be managed, how the bandwidth management should be handled. All those APIs are openly available.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Sure.
Elaborate a cloud RAN, regional cloud, and central cloud.
Yeah, see the radio access network has become very, very interesting. So what happens is that if it is a access cloud, what it means is that, let us say there is a industrial area or there is an office area, for example, Bangalore Electronic City. There are many, many offices. So if I have to provide the radio connectivity to all these enterprises, I may require, let's say, 50 base stations. So what option do I have? In 4G network, I probably will have couple of towers to cover them. Some of them will be the repeaters created in the building to make sure that indoor. Some cases there will be small cells. So technically, all of them are requiring a base station functionality. So in 5G disaggregated architecture, what happens is there is a concept of a DU and CU. So when you are having an access cloud, all this base station functionality, they could be controlled from a regional access hub located into Electronic City. CU could be either in Electronic City or let's say the central Bangalore area within 25 kilometer distance, right? So that the latency is not too bad as far as this end users are concerned. And CU location is where your user plane function also could be located. So what happens in this example, Electronic City becomes your access cloud. The CU location, let's say MG Road area, that becomes your aggregation or you can say the regional. And this regional center is connecting all the base stations into Karnataka state, let us say. And then in Bangalore, another location, there is a core network which is interconnecting the states, right? So this becomes your central cloud, access cloud, regional cloud, and then the central cloud is essentially a transport network of all India, where all these hubs having, let's say, a core network, they are connected together. So this is how your cloud distribution would be. So what happens is in this node, a set of computing nodes and the transport node will come together to provide the desired services to the connectivity requirement.
Sir, thank you, sir. These are the questions asked by the participants.
Okay, my pleasure.
We thank you so much for your acceptance, sir, and for the more interactive and information session on private 5G, intelligence at edge computing, and cognitive design and challenges, and for your insight thrown on the use cases, which will be helpful, will give a scope in our research, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you and wish you all the best for the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, bye.